favor of accepting the minutes January 4th, 2016, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Delegations and action items. Twintown Public Works request for site plan waiver, Memorial Park material shelter. Somebody want to, Jim or?
Oh, well,
Or Henry?
Henry?
I will do that. This is a capital project that we have, and it's required by the Maryland Department of Environment that we build a shelter over top of the gravel and the sand and the asphalt to protect it from the getting in to the waterways. So it's more out of a requirement than a necessity, I guess you could say. So, any questions?
Which way is the opening or the doors facing? Facing west?
It'll be facing towards Main Highway.
Or are they facing
It
houses?
should be facing towards the concrete building, towards the west, I believe, if this is correct.
And we'll have doors on it?
Yes?
No.
No?
Yes?
Yes?
It's a pole building, I don't believe it will.
It's just a three-sided shelter to cover the
Yeah.
materials.
Yeah, that's really, it's like three sides so that they can still come in with the front end loader to get material out.
And how tall is the structure? Curious if we're gonna have 20 feet or 60 feet?
I mean,
I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I didn't know you were gonna get all that technical. I'd have had Rick here.
no, we don't have a picture of what the shed,
No.
completed shed's supposed to look like, do we?
What's, I mean, 40 by 60 are the dimensions, it just doesn't provide a height.
It's 40 by 60, and the
I'm gonna let Jim take
doorway
over.
height, I know it is less than 20 feet. I want to say it's 16 feet, because for them to go 20 feet, which is what Public Works really wanted, so that a dump truck could back up and tip and dump the load right in the building, the cost more than doubled for the building, because apparently it changes the dimension of all the poles and everything
right.
to go that extra height. So it should be in the 20 to 24 foot height range.
Is this a pitched?
We don't have drawings yet from the manufacturer.
Okay.
So the purpose of this is for what?
Is to cover these materials through our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, also NPDES is the term you'll hear thrown around a lot. We have to cover these things so that when it rains, nothing can wash down and get in stormwater streams.
So what would be diked in any way to keep it from running?
The idea is just to keep the materials dry by keeping the rain off of them.
Right, is the roof of this structure pitched or flat, or what are we looking at there?
It should be pitched away from the door.
Towards the rear, I would say, okay.
Right, towards the
Ball
baseball
field, right.
Correct. Essentially, it's going to occupy the area that's the concrete slab in the pictures.
Right. And I assume these poles will be dug into the ground significantly, and it's,
Well, they'll have to pull a permit, and that'll be,
Well,
if it's Hanover Pole, they know what they're doing.
well, right.
I guess my only question and concern, not really concern, is even though it's for the city of Twentytown, it would be nice to have a picture of what the end results would look like. So if anybody questions us down the road, we have an idea of what we're approving a waiver for.
Right.
And I don't have anything against the waiver request, but I just would hate somebody ask me some questions afterwards.
Understood. It came to my attention just in the last couple weeks, and apparently it was at the point where the Public Works Department needed to make a move, and frankly hadn't thought about whether it would be subject to a site plan or not.
Now, is this going through our normal engineering firm, CDM?
No,
No.
no. It will go through Carroll County for building permit review and all of that. but we're hoping not to do the actual site plan piece of it, because it's just going over an already existing concrete pad. So, and again, the idea really is just to avoid getting fined through the NPDES permit for having these materials exposed to the rain.
Have they set a deadline for this to be covered?
They have been advising us to do it for several years, and it has not made it into the capital budget, and it looks like this year it will be in the capital
is.
budget.
Okay.
It already is.
Okay.
It's in this.
So it's funded this year.
All right.
Are there
Scott, you have any, Scott, you have any comments?
No, the permits, I'll take a look at it, and any kind of electrical or whatever,
Okay. Well, at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
You want me to do it? All right, I'll make the motion.
Look for a waiver.
Yeah. To
Grant the
the
waiver.
site plan for the Memorial Park Material Shelter.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Do you have any questions? Any comments from the floor? Okay. All those in favor of the motion of granting the waiver for the shelter at Memorial Park for Public Works, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Maybe as time goes on, we'll get some renderings.
Clarity?
I'll get a
Clarity.
copy of the drawings
Right.
once they're in our possession.
Thanks. Next item is Meads Crossing. Is that where we want to bring that in? Is that where you want to bring that in now, or did you?
If you want to do the shorter one first.
Shorter one first,
do the
okay.
cannabis, and
We'll
then
back that up. Okay, Jay, you want to highlight us on the dispensary?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. This is information only for you to think about some ideas. As you know, there's a proposal in the city that Councilman Wance and Councilman Vigliotti have been working on to amend the zoning code to regulate cannabis dispensaries in the city. And you're aware that in Maryland, they're issuing licenses for cannabis growing, processing, and dispensaries. This proposal would only address dispensaries, so the growing and processing and everything that's related to that, because I know that there's also, was on your agenda in the prior month, a waiver request for the growing processing facility. This has nothing to do with that, okay? So this is just dispensaries. And the thought behind this, the motivation behind this for Mr. Wance and Mr. Vigliotti is that before the licenses are issued and people want to set up shop to actually sell at this point in time medical marijuana, but maybe down the road, if it becomes decriminalized and becomes legalized for recreational use, it would probably be the location for selling recreational marijuana like you have in Colorado. We should do something in the zoning to make sure that the location that it can be in is not going to be detrimental to the city. So you need to start with the understanding that the city can't just say, we're not going to allow it. There's a lot of preemption under state law. Since it's legalized under state law, you can't just pick and say, we're not going to do it. Same with adult bookstores, liquor stores, that type of thing. But what the city can do is regulate it, and we can put it in a place that we feel is best able to handle it in a neighborhood. And the current proposal, and this is going to be introduced at the next council meeting, so in 2 weeks, would create a cannabis zoning overlay. What that means is it would be similar to Community Village and how it operates. If somebody wanted to have a cannabis zoning to sell cannabis, medical marijuana, they would have to come to the city council and ask for an overlay zone. They would have to submit a plan. They would have to do all the things you saw with Community Village. You know, what's it going to be like? A lot of the details. We don't need to get into that. But the overlay zone would only apply to industrially zoned properties. Okay, so you're not going to ever be able to get an overlay zone to do this in any of the commercial properties that are along Main Street, anywhere that you would think you could sell things. No, this is only going to be in the industrial area. So they would go ahead and they would submit that. If the mayor and council decided that that was a probable candidate for that, they would grant the overlay zone. So cannabis district overlay would happen. At that point in time, there'd be several restrictions. And most notably, they have to acquire all the permits, the state and local permits. But the site would have to be 500 feet from any residential use, residential zone, any school use, any park use that exists at the time that the application is made. So if you look at a zoning map and you say, okay, these are the industrial areas, and then you start measuring where those things could be, they put them into the middle of the industrial areas. So they are as far away as possible. And if you take the map, and when we get further along, I know that Councilman Wentz, Councilman Vigilotti have mock-up maps of where this actually could locate. So that would basically be that. This other requirement is that this use would have to submit a site plan to the commission. They would have to come in and basically answer all the questions for a site plan and site plan review, which would deal with the normal things: water, sewer, traffic, security, lighting, all the basics. If that all met muster, so the council was good with this, it could be located in the certain area inside the industrial zone, then the actual use would become a conditional use. They would have to go before the Board of Zoning Appeals to get permission to use it as a conditional use, wherein the Board of Zoning Appeals could put several conditions on the actual use. And those conditions are the normal ones. You could deal with hours, you could deal with parking, you could deal with all the things that you would normally think of conditional use. What we really want the commission, your group, to think about, are there any special conditions that you think should be examined? Now, I'm going to make something up, so don't take this as a reality, but let's say it should be a condition of locating in this spot, if they do it, that you have a 10-foot wall built around your area. We could do that. The example would be if we have a daycare, we dictate they have a fence. So that's a condition of having the daycare. What we're at a loss for, not necessarily at a loss, is we need to kind of vet, are there any special conditions that you think should apply? So that's the background on this. Here's how the process is going to work. At the next council meeting in March, there's going to be the zoning ordinance introduced. It'll come back to you at your March Planning Commission meeting for your review at that point in time. While you certainly could take it under review and hold it, the plan would be we really want this expedited because we want to have the zoning in place before the state issues the permits to locate dispensaries. Because if we drag our feet and somebody able to get a permit, we have no zoning on it, then the logical thing would be they could do it in the commercial zone because they're selling a product. So we want this in place before that happens. We're worried that that might happen by May, so we want to beat the May deadline. We introduced the ordinance in March. It comes to you at the end of March. The public hearing on this with the council would be the first meeting in April. It would get adopted in the middle of April. It would be effective by May before the permits come out. So what that means is you need to email me, call me, do your homework if there's anything you think needs to be added to this beyond the obvious. I've thought of the obvious, the things they need to submit and the expiration dates and those types of things. Councilman Wentz is here, Councilman Vigliotti is here. If they have any comments or want to expand upon this, this has been something that we've worked on as a team.
I have no more comments. Councilman Vigliotti, do you have any comments?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, sir. If you do have any questions in the meantime, as you think about this, feel free to contact myself or Councilman Vigliotti or the city attorney.
Will this be brought up at your workshop, your scheduled meeting?
It will be at the workshop, yes.
So that's when we're going to first roll it out to the council.
Okay.
Anything else?
That's all I
I think
have.
I'm thinking.
Okay, good.
I don't know if this is placed or not. Any comments from the floor on this? Just to give an opportunity so we can hear some input maybe to help us start thinking our ways.
Good talk. Good talk.
All right,
I like that.
not hearing none. You know how to get a hold of us if there is.
You wasn't here last.
I wasn't,
You pull up. Next item on the agenda, Mead Crossing, revised final subdivision presentation, consideration of subdivision amendment. Jim or Jay or somebody would like to get us started off here.
Jay, you want to sit over here?
I'll wait until we finish discussing and then I'll.
Okay.
Well, maybe since the wall, you may want to come over here anyway.
Well, just to pick up from where we left off with our January meeting, we had kind of an informal look at some changes that Meads Crossing would like to make to the approved major subdivision plan. As you're aware, the plan has been approved for several years, but there's been some difficulty with locating a builder to get the project moving. So Meads has, in reaction to that builder feedback, come back with some changes they'd like to see. And you have my report from the January meeting.
Yes.
Hopefully with some concerns and code-related issues that I wanted to call to your attention. And so tonight, really, we're gonna have the I guess, in-depth version of what we talked about a little bit in January. So, I'm gonna turn it over to Steve Smith from Meads.
Yeah, and I think maybe the way we should break this down so all participants can kind of see this is maybe the presentation that Steve gives us talks about what it is they want, the changes, those types of things, and we'll deal with the tangible changes on the property. And then after we deal with the what's, then maybe we can start talking about the hows and how we get there and how that, have some discussion on that, if that's good for everybody.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm Steve Smith with Meads Crossing LLC, and I appreciate this opportunity tonight. Since our meeting in early January, we have been busy trying to put together a program to give you all a better idea of what we're talking about. In a very broad overview, where we stand is, as you know, we've had this, Meads Crossing has been approved for a number of years. We have been actively trying to solicit a builder to come in to build it, and we've gotten enormous resistance with the rear-loaded garage product, and that's really based on locational. If it's a very urban location, that's a saleable product, but the builders are beyond reluctant to build this in a more rural location. They feel that it's important that backyards are a big driver in getting people to buy a new home in this area, and so that's where we are. We've come in with some revisions, and we have again a little program here that we'll run through. Sean Davis, our land planner, will kick us off.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you again. It's been a while. So when we started looking at the proposed revisions, there was a couple overriding principles. First, we wanted to make sure that we ensured that the plan continued to meet the community village designation. And in so doing, we really wanted to minimize any revisions to the plan, with the exception of the garage locations. So starting off with the definition in your zoning code of community village, I point out a couple things. It's a planned neighborhood containing strategically located civic and common open spaces such as squares, playfields, and natural spaces as visual and physical focal points, which may include a variety of dwelling types enabled by the code that are attractively designed with high-quality architectural detail and continuity, where particular attention is given to the garage locations, the off-street parking. There are appropriately located deciduous street trees, grass strips between curb and sidewalk, and scaled lighting fixtures along streets are amenities to be included in the community village designation. It embraces traditional neighborhood principles, design principles, including such things as alleys, where variations on traditional neighborhood design and such other creative land planning design that, in the discretion of the Planning Commission, it may be appropriate for the location. And then you move from there to the purpose and intent of the community village is described, and when you get back into the actual ordinance itself, it's really talking about design. It's talking about a flexibility for unit types and design of the community. So what we want to do is we want to walk you through the design, and you'll see at the end that it's very, very similar, almost identical to what we have today. So when we approach the property, can you see this okay?
I may have to dim some lights because it's,
Actually, it's also really distorted. I'm wondering.
Oh, that's better.
So really what we're talking about, we have, let's see if I can. We have 194 here. We have Angel Road here. We have Crimson Avenue right here coming into the property. And then this is the property itself with access back out here. We have the existing structures that will be many of which will be retained for the community center on the site. So when we start looking at a site, one of the first things we do is we identify environmental constraints in the property that we really need to respect. The wetlands, floodplains, those types of things, and those are illustrated here in green. And then we really, once we have that down, we really start talking about circulation networks. What is the primary, the overriding circulation network? And obviously in this particular instance, we really wanted to provide a, if you will, a spine road that circumnavigates through the property, connecting Crimson over here to Angel over here, and then provide our connection back out to 194 here. So we've got the major roadway networks spelled out. Then we come in and we start looking at the neighborhood roadway network to fill out the individual neighborhoods. Then we move on to this is probably the most critical part, we move on to the parks and open spaces, the squares, those amenity areas that are called out in the community village and where they're physically located. And as I think you'll see, when we look at this, when you're coming in basically along all of the major roads, coming in off 194, coming down, you're focusing on the recreation center, right in the center of the community. So you've got a great view shed, a great focal point, as was described in the definition, coming into the community here. But also along Crimson, all along here, we've sprinkled parks, little pocket parks over here, a little pocket park here, and then a nice dog walk right here. So all along that road, you're getting these really great views, and they've been purposely designed. So like, for example, when I come in the main road, and when I come in the main road and I turn right and I hit this, I'm focusing on this point right here. When I come in, if I was to come in from our neighbors, I'd be focusing on this park right here. If I was to turn left and I make this turn, when I make that turn, I'm focusing on this area right here. And again, when I make that turn, I'm focusing on this park. So those parks were strategically located as per the community village definition and purpose and intent to really take advantage of them and illustrate them throughout the property. But we didn't stop there. We also included pocket parks, if you will, in the various neighborhoods to really make sure that we were mixing them up throughout the entire community. Now, how do we interconnect all these? We interconnect them with a really strategic trail system. The proposed streetscape has sidewalks associated with it. So this is the trail system, the multi-purpose trail system that really runs throughout the property. We have connections to our neighbors down here through our forest conservation area that will come through this park, come all the way down here, link up with the sidewalk system, come back up here, cross over, come down here, come back down to the railroad, and it's our understanding there's the possibility of a Rails to Trail program along the railroad from this point heading to the west, if you will. That then continues back around through the community, links back up with the community center, ties this portion of the community. So the multi-purpose trails are linking really, really well with the sidewalks. So everybody in the neighborhood can really get anywhere via the sidewalks or the multi-purpose trails. And then we fold in the home types. And we've got this really wonderful mixture of single-family detached homes and the single-family townhomes, single-family attached townhomes. And then the last thing that we do is really kind of tie in the real detailed landscape architecture streetscape, where we're talking about deciduous trees and grass strips along the road. Those are illustrated here. But a couple of other things to point out that we show here is there are important along Crimson Avenue here. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we have really safe pedestrian access from various parts of the community over to other parts of the community. So we've strategically located some really key crosswalks along this. These may be elevated, they may be a different paving pattern, there may be a variety of different things. So when you're driving along that road, there's going to be it's going to be a narrower road with designated parallel parking that's separated from the road itself, with nice crosswalks, with the street trees and a variety of other things. And to us, that really kind of embraces all the principles that we read about under the definition section and purpose and intent for community village. This is a comparison of the current plan and the proposed plan. As you can see, the roadway networks, fundamentally the same. The trail system has actually been beefed up in the proposed plan than what was originally designed in the original plan. The only variation is, in the original plan, this neighborhood right here was townhomes, the single-family attached townhomes, and now in this plan you can see it is single-family homes. So when you're coming in off 194, you'll be embraced by single-family homes on both sides of the road. But in order to maintain the density that we were looking for, which has increased under the proposed plan, we've taken this neighborhood right here and switched it from single-family homes to townhomes, immediately adjacent across the street from the remaining townhome neighborhoods. But the roadway network really hasn't changed at all. When we were talking about the townhomes in one of our prior meetings, there was a concern about townhome development in general. And so we went through Tawnytown and really looked at what your existing townhome stock is. And obviously, there's a variety of different townhome neighborhoods, and they're old and they're tired. And this is an example of one neighborhood. Here's an example of another neighborhood. These are all surface parked, so there's no garages associated with them. In a lot of instances, unfortunately, because of just as a land planner, I look at land planning. You're coming in at the wrong views. You're coming in on the back of these homes. There's really no privacy. That resident right there, every night, he's got car lights coming into their parking lot, and it's not good. And it's just, in my opinion, it's poor site planning. And again, they're old. And then you have a lot of parking immediately off the street, and it's really been doubled up, and fundamentally everything's been paved. That's really not what we're proposing at all. In fact, we're proposing something really, really different. We're going to show you a series of townhomes that have been built very close to you, and we invite you to go down and check them out. These are the exact same sizes as we're proposing: 22-foot end units, 20-foot center, 22-foot end. Really great materials. You've got a masonry water table down here that wraps around the side, the shutters, the awnings as you're coming out, the bay box windows, the dormers. There's a variety of architectural things going on. But in this particular instance, at Meads Crossing, every end unit will have a 2-car garage and 2 parking spaces in front. So they'll have 4 parking spaces for every end unit.
Could you say it again? Back up about 2 sentences, say that again.
So every end unit are 22 feet wide, here and here, whether it be in what we call a stick. A stick is all of these collected together. In a stick of townhomes, all of the end units are 22 feet wide. They'll have a 2-car garage and 2 what we call tandem spaces in the driveway. So they'll have 4 parking spaces for every one of the end units. The center units, however, will have a 1-car garage and 1 tandem space, so they'll only have 2. So as you'll see in a minute, we have located the additional 3rd required space very, very close to each portion of the townhome neighborhood. And then we're going to talk about it overall. At the end of the day, there are collectively 4 parking spaces per home in Meads Crossing. Okay, we recognize that's a very, very important part of your consideration because of what you have in town today. This is a really different product. It's a very, very different product. Architecturally, it's really fantastic. So there's an example. Here's another. This is a stick of 4 homes. Again, the detail is really great. Look at how this masonry kind of turns the corner on what we call publicly visible lots. So if that end is on a street, then we treat it differently. But you can also see, right here, that doesn't have it because it's really close to the next unit, and so we don't need it. But we're really trying to take it and focus this. That's the architectural details that's really called out for in the community village design. This is a stone facade as opposed to the brick facade. Very, very similar elements. Here's another with again, very, very similar. And finally, the last example that we have. These are located, here is Meads Crossing right here. These are located down in the Owings Mills area. The first one, Franklin Green, is right off, I believe it's Red Run Boulevard, very close to back up to 795. And the second one is Ballard Green, which I've spent, I think, about 7 years of my life working on, which is right here. For a little bit more detailed, you can get to Franklin Green right off Red Run Boulevard here. And Ballard Green, you would just take Owings Mills Boulevard down to Lions Mill Road, and you can see those right here. So we invite you to go down and see them, to touch them, to feel them, to look at them, because I think you're going to see they're completely different than what you have in town today. The level of quality of this product is really, really superb, and it fits very specific lifestyles. As a young family, or maybe even as an empty nester that I just want to downsize, I want to be able to lock up my house and go down to Florida in months like we had in February and get get out of here and not have to worry about it. Okay. one of the things that was really important is Crimson Avenue is it's a 30-foot, it's actually a 32-foot road section. So it's 30 feet of pavement. And the way we've separated that out is fundamentally we have 8 feet for the parallel parking space and 22 feet for the travel lanes. And the parking along Crimson will be in what we call secured parking spaces. It's not going to be like you would see in other streets in Tawnytown. What happens is there's a curb that comes out and then goes back in that provides a secure parking for those cars along that. But in other portions of the community, it will be open. One side would be, in all probability, will be identified as no parking, and then you'll have specific areas, and we'll talk about those in a second. So this is the parking for the townhome neighborhood. As we said, there are 135 townhomes. 54 are the end units, the 2-car garages. So 81 are the center units, the 1-car, 1 tandem space. So we had to find 81 parking spaces through the community in order to service those. And we sprinkled them here to kind of filter down into these, here to kind of work with these units right here, here to kind of work with this court over here. This will really kind of focus over here, and these guys will really focus over here. And then you'll see we are proposing additional parallel spaces in here. For example, this is one of those crosswalks that we talked about for all the residents who were coming down, go to the recreation center, want to cross over and go to here. This is going to be one of those intersections that is going to have a really upgraded cross section and really, really spectacular. So now here's what we're talking about overall. The additional spaces that you see highlighted in orange sprinkled throughout here, they're really associated with the parks for the most part. They're really adjacent to the park, so people can come up, they can park if they need to, and then get out and enjoy the park. But they're also kind of sprinkled throughout the community. And so what we've got is, in this particular instance, we have a total of 84 additional spaces. So we are required to provide 3 parking spaces per home. The total number of homes illustrated on this plan is 363. So we're required to provide 1,089. We have 228 single-family detached homes at 4 spaces per home. It was 912, 54 of the 22-foot wides, 81 of the 20s, and then the 165 visitor parking for a total of 1,455 spaces on this, throughout the community. That is 4 parking spaces per home. So we believe there's ample parking. We believe that we've been able to maintain the integrity of the community village through the strategic location of our open spaces and the trail system. And we've actually been able to expand the trail system with things that we've learned over the last couple months for the future integration into hopefully the rails and trails. And even, if you will, one of the things that we had talked about was the trail can really go this way, if we wanted to. If we really wanted to come back, actually, I think this is west. If we wanted to come back to the western part, then we can do that as well. There's room for that. But we've actually shown it kind of looping back in. Didn't know whether or not this wanted to happen, but we knew that this is a distinct possibility. So we believe we've been able to meet all those the intent of the community village design, and we really look forward to talking about the how. I think that's it for me. I think we want to talk a little bit about fiscal.
I don't want to get down into too much detail here, but I want to at least show that there's a pretty significant economic impact of this community. There's another reason to get it in the ground sooner than later. One-shot deal.
Yeah. The top green button.
So right here, fees associated to the town for the completion of the 362 homes will be just over $5 million. And here, these are the buckets that they're, the water benefit, the sewer, and the police assessment, which is all outlined in the DAR. And obviously, this all goes to the town. Then there's a relatively large portion of the real estate taxes that go to the county. That's just a tad over $1 million. There's also a piece of that goes to the town, which is about $364,000. based on what we think is the sale prices. And then the personal income tax, which is also just a little over $300,000. So, said differently, the economic impact to the town will be a one-shot $5.2 million, and on an annualized basis, somewhere around $700,000 as a result of the community.
That concludes our presentation.
Other than the financial impacts, I also wanted to talk briefly about the social impacts. And really, in looking at the school enrollment for Tawnytown, the schools are at the highest is 75% of capacity, and I believe the middle school's about 52% of state rated capacity. What we're bringing to Tawnytown is market rate homes, starter homes. I think it's important for the community. I think it's going to energize the community. So that's where we are. That's our, what we're here for tonight. And Dave's going to speak briefly on how we get there, hopefully. With your help.
Okay. I'm going to be using the overhead mill.
And then maybe we can shut the lamp off.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right, good evening.
Go ahead, we'll be here in a minute.
It's fine, I'm just waiting. If I start squinting, it's only my eyes trying to adapt. I'm Dave Bowersox, and I'm here tonight in actually a couple of capacities. It's been a while since I've been back here to talk to you about this project and this property, but for a period of time, it seemed like a fairly regular, if not frequent, kind of a stopover. I have the privilege for probably 23 years now of representing the Bollinger family. And when they were introduced to the gentleman that you just met, Mr. Gold and Mr. Smith, they asked if I could on occasion also help them with certain administrative matters, and I've been honored to continue to do that. When I first started coming here, my hair was a different color, and I was married to someone else, but I don't know that there's necessarily a cause and effect relationship with either of those things here. With that being said, what is it that we're asking to do tonight, and how can we achieve it? We're asking you to approve as some amendments or modifications to the final plat and construction drawings to allow us to move forward with changing those. The features that have been, I think, very, very nicely described for you here this evening. What we will need for you to do that is to authorize this as some sort of an exemption or modification of the plan under the Community Village Code. You've seen the definition of community village and the purpose and intent. Mr. Davis presented that to you on his first two slides. That really is our pole star here. Now, the modifications have to do with the elimination of alleys and rear-loaded garages, as I know you're well aware of. Having reviewed the community village ordinance and taking those provisions in consideration in light of what the Court of Appeals and Court of Special Appeals have told us about interpretation of those codes, I'm convinced that there is a mechanism whereby this board can grant an exemption from the code requirements for rear-loaded garages and rear alleyways for these various units. I'm happy to go into detail or answer any questions that you may have, but instead of putting you to sleep with a discussion of the legal principles, I will offer it as I'm convinced that you do have the authority to make these changes according to your own code. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to address them for you.
Okay, thank you. Jay or Jim, either one of you guys want to jump in here, how we interpret or how we in the past has interpreted the community village ordinance as far as the rear parking and
Yes.
grass in the front.
I'll walk you through that, and that's been a subject of a lot of discussion. I want to give you the legal side to follow up on what Mr. Bowersox said, and then work to the practical side, and I think that's where we have. The staff has discussed this at length and had several meetings on it, and it's clear to us that the issue is not clear, okay? So it sounds lawyerly, right? This is a gray area. And I want to point out the sections of the code if you want to make notes of them so you can refer to them later. But we're dealing with Community Village Code in the zoning ordinance 25-35.1, okay? And there are three operable sections, subsection D, subsection E, and subsection H. And I don't want to get into too much, but I want to show you how confusing this is. These sections all deal with parking and driveways, and they all reference townhouses. They specifically say townhouses, they say condominiums and apartments. But nowhere in the zoning code is a townhouse a definition. You don't see townhouse dash is blah, 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 blah. If you go to the zoning code, the definitions in the zoning code talk about the dwelling types. They talk about single-family houses. They talk about detached houses and semi-detached houses. They talk about attached dwellings. Nobody says townhouses. If you read the code enough, you can find out that 6 attached dwellings, anything less than, more than 3 and less than 6, probably is a townhouse, because that's kind of what we're talking about here. Those sticks that Sean showed were less than that. But townhouse isn't shown. So that starts the first layer of gray. The issue that the zoning administrator and I have tried to deal with is how can in subsection D it say that dwelling units can have driveways as modified as what you say. In subsection E, say they can't have them in the front yard unless you say they can. And then in subsection H, say that off-street parking for townhouses, condominium parties shall be in off-street parking and not in the front yard. You seem that you have a confusion. So we have agreed on certain big terms, and we disagree on the small terms. We all agree that H probably creates a prohibition. But E also has the word townhouse in there as semi-detached. Okay, there's no definition for townhouses. More than 3, less than 6 is attached, but we already said that that's probably a townhouse too. So the gray area gets you to the point where H is probably overridden by E. D says you can do it. E says that it can happen as long as you agree it can happen. That we pretty much agree on. Then there's the disagreement of the scope. You read that paragraph a little bit further, and it says you can modify them in specific instances on specific lots and permitted driveway in the front yard, and it goes on and goes on and goes on. And the way that sets up, everybody agrees, is like a scale. It says you can allow these in certain areas in order to get the benefits in other areas, the benefits of community village. And those are all the things that you heard in the presentation, the windy roads, the parks, the type of things. And so the argument that I think presents itself is, if you want any of the things that you've seen here, probably going to have to allow driveways in the front, because they can't sell that product with driveways in the back. That's at least the argument being made. And you have precedent that you all have already said on the single families, you're allowing driveways in the front and garage parking. And this ordinance says you can't do that unless you do it on a case-by-case basis. So I'm assuming that for however many single families, you said every one of those is okay to do because we get this benefit and the scale tips in the favor of doing it. So the question becomes, could you do it there? And that's the legalities of this. There is a question of scope, to give you the other side of the argument. The staff argument, it sometimes says, can you do it completely for the whole development? Because if you've done it completely for the whole development, is not the exception now the rule? And shouldn't that be the exception rather than the rule? Now, we'll move this subject to the next thing. I told you this was going to be complicated. The next issue is the other community village type that we've dealt with successfully is Carol Vista. Carol Vista was the first one. This code was actually written for them. When Carol Vista was there, present, this code did not sit as exactly as it was. We made the modification to this code later that said the Planning Commission could make changes to this. Before, it didn't exist. Carol Vista does not have alleys. Carol Vista all has front garages. In order to get that product for them, they had to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to get a variance for that. We can argue whether or not the code allows that, but in reality, it happened. So in 2002 or 3, they went to the Board of Zoning Appeals and got the variance. And the reason why, again, I don't want to be too lawyerly, but I want you to understand, the reason why they can go to the Board of Zoning Appeals in 2003 is because Community Village is a zoning code. And zoning codes go to the Board of Zoning Appeals when you want to have changes. You all are used to dealing with subdivision regulations and site plan codes. Those don't go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. You can't get variances. So Community Village is a hybrid. It gives you a lot of subdivision and site plan regulation things in there, sizes, streets, number of things that you see, but it also gives you a lot of zoning things. It's located in the zoning code, so an appeal to this can go to the zoning code. So that's number 2. The reality then is we believe that if you all do not grant such a waiver, or you don't grant the waiver to the extent that's liked, that the applicant could file for a variance to the Board of Zoning Appeals, have a hearing at the Board of Zoning Appeals, and get a variance to that term. So that's the legal side. Now let me give you the practical side. I always like to be practical with you when we're done here. Community Village is an overlay, meaning there's an underlying base zone of R something, 10,000? R10,000.
10,000, yep.
If the developer has decided to build R10,000, the density would be less, and you would have a cookie cutter development that looks like the one next to it. So they could decide today, we're going to park our cars in garages in the front. There would be no townhouses. You would have straight streets, lots that are designed by code instead of by form, which is what you have here. That's number 1. Number 2 is, you could say, we're not going to deal with this. We'll let the Board of Zoning Appeals deal with it. They grant the variance, and then you have no say because they basically said the zoning code is varied. And it's not like the Board of Zoning Appeals is people we don't know. It's Jim and I sitting at this very table with the Board of Zoning Appeals there saying the same thing. It's gray. Who knows how it's going to be interpreted? What do you think? And the Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the normal acumen to deal with this. You guys deal with site plans. You've been doing this one for 8 years now. And the last one is completely practical. 8 years ago or 7 years ago, these guys came in and said, we want to put alleys in the back. Yes, they asked to put alleys in the back. And we fought them tooth and nail.
We did. We did.
I hated the idea.
We had presentations where one of the councilmen took pictures of motorhomes going in the back of alleys to see how big they would fit. We had the Public Works Director talking about where we were going to push snow and who was going to maintain these alleys. And they eventually twisted our arms and said, we need the alleys. Well, we said, okay. Now they don't want the alleys. Okay, so the question that I'll ask you is, 7 or 8 years ago, this code was the same. It says no parking in the front, it says no driveways in the front. When we were fighting them saying no alleys, what were we going to do?
Right.
So I submit to you that in the end, you definitely have the authority, as Attorney Bowersock said, to make some decisions here, to make some changes. You don't have to, you can. There's other avenues that they can deal with. But you need to look at the end result. And I think that's what Jim and I have agreed on is, do you want to see this project be successful? Does it meet the needs of the community? How can it meet the needs of the community the best way to make it happen? Because there are several ways to skin the cat. But at the end of the day, all of us have invested about 8 years of our lives to try to make this happen. And I'll end it up with something that totally unrelated to law. You saw the numbers up there and the amount of money that's coming in. That looks like a windfall for the city, right? That looks like, hey, we're going to make $5 million. But what you have to remember is the $3 million they're paying us for the sewer impact fees, we already spent. We redid the York Street pumping station, cost $3.7 million. We already paid for it, and we're paying interest on it. Till they build, we don't get our money back. And the same goes for the water and things like that. So while finances shouldn't be the only aspect of it, you can't forget that this can't be made in a vacuum. There is money at stake here, and this property is ready to build, and it's the only property in town, aside from the last phases of Meadowbrook, that can produce houses in a short-term period. And we hear all about the water and the sewer rates and the financial straits of the town. If you look back to Carol Vista, there has been really no tax increases, but spending has gone up. And that's because 500 units at Carol Vista came online and increased the tax base so that spending could go up without affecting the individual citizens. If we don't do that again and get these people start to build, the citizens and the taxes are the ones that have the burden. So those are the legal side, the practical side. I've spoken enough.
Okay, Jim, we need your input.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and argue with the city attorney.
Some people do that in public meetings.
So, as I said, I laid out the concerns that I had regarding the sections of the code. I think an argument has been made, that you guys do have the authority to consider these changes. I remain concerned, but as I said, if we have the ability to do it, it's really in your hands. So if you guys like what the changes are and tell me to do it, we'll figure it out. I think we certainly need more review of some, certainly the construction drawings. There are a lot of questions that we need to answer with a more in-depth review than we've been able to do with the kind of more conceptual views that we've had so far. So there's definitely going to be more review of construction drawings for sure, regardless of what path we take. But I suppose it comes down to, do you like what you guys are seeing to move forward, or do you want to ponder it, or?
Well, I gotta say, I like the presentation that was put on this evening. And I guess the thing is, and Jay, I don't know why you had to say there's so many gray areas, because it's hard to make a decision when there's so many gray areas. Which side's right, which side's wrong? There is no right or there is no wrong. Do we want grass in the front? Do we want grass in the back? If you read one section, the garages go in the back. We go in the back. We got the alleys back. We put it in the front. What impact that's going to have on backing out into the streets? All the parking. I think you did cover the area. I was glad to see that you have close over 300 more parking spots that's needed or that's required. There's other areas I think we really need to look at. I guess, what's our options as far as either going one way or the other? I guess there is no other way. If you can't go back to the original final drawing or preliminary drawings, how do we get to the next phase if we agree to go with the front-loaded?
Well, I'll give you a couple thoughts on the procedure.
Try to keep it down the middle so we're not...
Black and white, Jay, black and white.
I didn't go to school for black and white.
If it's black and white, you're out of work.
All right. In my opinion, there is no need, no matter what name you're going to put on this, to go back to preliminary plan. Okay? Because the things that are affected, and again, don't get lost in the words, but the things that are affected by a preliminary plan review would not be affected by these changes. Okay? Yes, stormwater. It'll be less than it was if you do this because you'll have less impervious surface. Yes, there's going to be a review to confirm all that, but it's pretty obvious it's going to be less. Roads need to be looked at. I don't think the sewer lines change so much. So all the details have to be looked at, but when you do preliminary review, there's a couple things that happen that send bells off. First, it goes around to all the agencies to be looked at again. And they will all come back after a time of review saying, there's no change to the forest conservation, soil and sediment control, there's no change. They'll come back saying there's nothing to review. And the second thing that we should be concerned with is there would be an issue of whether or not the grandfathering for stormwater is affected. Now, we would all argue that it's not. Even the city does not want it to be affected. But there always is something where preliminary plan approval is what got the grandfathering to start. So if you're changing that, would it be? So we want to say that any changes you want to make are going to be amendments to the final plan and construction drawings. We usually do that, and you usually see that in the field with red lines. The rock was there, we can't brass the rock, we're making a red line on the drawing, and it just happens. This is a little too extreme for red line changes. So we're going to call these, if you wanted to do whatever you do, an amendment to the final plan and construction drawings. And what you would do is, after you decide the scope of what you want to happen, is you would make a motion to do that, to accept the, call it concept, not concept like in the code, but accept what they proposed as that. They have to go do some homework then, consistent with that, which is what Mr. Weeprick's talking about, is we need to do a lot of review to make sure it's right. If they build or design what they're talking about in accordance with the plan that you saw up here, there's no reason why you just can't have sign-offs and be done. It doesn't need to come back, in other words. If they do something different, well then all bets are off and we're back here again. And the reason why I'm trying to avoid a two-step process here is that's what preliminary and final is. And we're not trying to do that, right? We're trying to just say final, make the changes you wanted to, like a red line, but we're going to review it a lot more than a red line. So that's the process. Now the what. What do you put into the process?
What you're saying is, I guess my concerns is giving approval on a final and not seeing the final.
Mm-hmm.
Not seeing the final, meaning not going through Jim's review and what other reviews we need to make sure that things are in order.
I think you can get it to the detail where you want, because it's the final plan. You're going to approve the concept of them amending the final plan.
But we don't, okay, the concept is changing the so-called townhouses with the single home houses and a couple green areas and some additional parking.
Right.
So what else is involved?
And if I put myself on the applicant's side, I'd want to know that you're okay with that concept before I spend money and time to flesh that out. When I flesh that out, I'd be happy to bring it back if I were them to say, see, here's what I did. But I don't know that they can do the see, here's what I did, and then you say, we're not good with parking in the front.
Well, I'm trying to get enough put together that I can get some type of motion on the floor to talk about it. And right now, I wouldn't know, I have any idea what kind of motion we would make to put this on the floor.
Well, I guess let's break it down then into the what we're dealing with. Let's call this a proposal. They have a proposed amendment that you just saw here. So if we look at a motion to accept, remember we used to use those terms of accept versus approved?
Right.
We make a motion to accept the approved amendments. That's your motion. You can have some discussion, and then you can decide whether the proposal, the acceptance of the approved amendments are good. They can walk out of here then, if you grant it, with saying, we're accepted. We got to get some stuff done to get the approval according to the acceptance. If you don't accept it, they walk out of here tonight saying we probably need to go to the BZA sooner rather than later.
Okay. So,
It would seem to me the motion would be accepting the concept plan subject to the final construction drawings and plats being prepared and approved accordingly. Because I think your concern is that Jim has to see it, CDM has to see it.
right.
And so if you're approving the concept and then we're saying, then we have to back this up by getting you the approved, getting construction plans to you for approval.
You guys all see where I'm trying to go?
Yeah, but you gotta go a good ways.
But we gotta get it on the floor to be able to go a direction.
Well, you know, the no streets in the back, we like that, you know, that's all a good thing. But, you know, I wanna see something about where we're losing parking, and I don't see it on these plans that we're gaining any. That's what we're coming, I wanna see. Where are we gonna park all these townhouse cars? Not down the street a half a mile, because they're not gonna do that. And I don't like,
Well, I'd like to have seen that too, broke down where you put those additional parking in those spots around the townhouses. You just had brown areas. In
Right.
that brown areas, was it 4 cars or was it 14 cars?
Don't you have that information right now? Can you throw that slide back up and we can talk about it?
But-
Give me a second.
But can we get a motion, some type of motion on the floor so we can bring this out into a discussion?
So do we want to make a motion to accept the proposed changes for, is it the
Give us more help.
final?
Final
yeah,
subdivision.
Final,
Yeah, proposed changes to the amendment of the final subdivision plan and construction drawings.
so moved.
Is
Second.
there- Okay, got a second.
Let me write that down.
Now we'll have discussion on it.
Okay.
Now, if you want,
He's gonna put that back.
let's start with the, don't forget that motion. We'll start with Ollie's question. Of where we're gonna get the parking. And in the meantime, while he's doing that, what changes, if any, needs to be done to the DAR?
None.
Yeah, he said nothing.
No changes to the DAR, no change to the ordinance, no changes to the Public Works Agreement.
Okay. Do we want to make any, or request anything for storm management, for the storm management pond? I mean, even though they don't have to go back, I don't want your answer. Even though they don't have to go back and redo this, is there anything that could be down the road 5, 10 years from now that we would have to do as a city to bring it up, that we should be asking these folks to do now?
Right. And that's more Mr. Weeper.
Well, that's why I wanted another chance or somebody, to go through this. So,
I can address that if you would hear what we found out.
okay,
So, when the stormwater management was designed, it was done using a runoff curve number that is based on density for the property. That didn't change. So our stormwater management will have less paving, but it does not change our design. And our design does provide water quality, which is the issue where the states had problems, is that the stormwater management was quantity only without quality. And we provide quality per the old way of doing it, which most people would argue is the better way of doing it, because it's, instead of spreading it throughout the site, we're providing it in the 2 facilities that we're building and improving.
Jim, you okay? Jim, you good on that for now?
For now.
For now, okay. Okay, now we can go back to the parking spots. How many parking spots do we need just for that section of
but
townhouses?
we don't want to count, because there's 4 at the single-family homes, we don't want that counted as townhouse parking places. It's not townhouse, and you did do that.
Right,
No.
right.
Yes, you did.
Hold
No.
on.
Yeah, he
I was
separated.
about to walk up, and I have this pointer.
Right.
The end units, these end townhomes, every one of these, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, every one of the end units is 22 feet wide, has a 2-car garage, and 2 tandem driveway spaces. So every one of those has 4 cars on their lot.
I understand that one. That part I understand.
Okay.
It's the ones, all the middles that I'm worried about, going a half a mile to get a parking place, because they're not gonna go there.
Okay. So all of the middle ones here, there are 81 middle ones. So they have 1-car garage and 1 driveway for 2 spaces. So we gotta provide them the third.
And one of them cars is counted in the garage where the lawnmowers and stuff like that's gonna be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have no control over that.
Have
That's their decision.
That's
Yeah, we
their,
don't have no cure for
that's
that.
their discretion.
But, yeah, right, but.
You back away from that, Sean, and show the extra spaces.
Okay, I still want, back to Ollie, or Mr. Glass here, what,
All right, so here's what happens, okay, and we've kind of set this up purposefully. There are 15 parking spaces. There are 5, 10, 15 parking spaces over here. These parking spaces are really focused at serving these residents, okay? That's not a half a mile. It's actually, a couple hundred yards, tops, okay? So we have parking for this core right here. This core is split up between, there's 10 parking spaces there, there's 10 parking spaces there. There's 5, 6, and 8 parking spaces there. So we believe comfortably that these guys are served really, really well. We have on the other exhibit, and forgive me because I produced this exhibit several weeks ago, and then we were talking about additional parking, and there is another exhibit which I'll flip to in a second that shows there is additional parking right here, okay, above and beyond what we're talking about. So collectively, if I go there, and then I also,
And that's that secured parking that you're referring to, correct? Yeah. Because Jim, you bumped it, the curb comes in, so it's actually inside the road.
okay,
yeah, so what
okay,
happens is
gotcha, gotcha.
in this particular instance, the way this was originally designed, this is 32 feet. So what we've done is we've actually taken this curb and we've brought it out into the street 8 feet and then tucked it back to where it is today, carried it back, then brought
Okay.
it back out. So
Gotcha.
those are secured, dedicated, parallel parking spaces. They will have a stripe. It'll be abundantly clear that that's where parking is. And that happens all along Crimson Avenue.
So basically, you make those brown spots then too, right?
Yeah, they would be.
And that would
I'll show you
represent-
those in a second.
You showing a
Unfortunately,
different picture?
we produced this exhibit and then I
Right,
literally
okay.
produced the next exhibit today at 2 o'clock.
Now, those spots, if you go back to the top of the image, they're shown up there exactly
Yeah.
with the
Yeah,
jut outs and
exactly,
everything.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly right. And then for this, the next portion of the community here, we have located, there's 15 spaces here and there's 15 spaces here to serve, that 15 spaces serves this group and this 15 spaces serves this group. We did not want to have these on Crimson Avenue. You can see that we very easily could have taken 7 or 8 of them here and dropped them down on Crimson Avenue. But we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to put that, what we call back-in parking, right in there, or head-in parking right on Crimson Avenue, okay?
Now, when you had all the alleys, they simply had the same amount of parking, the garage and the pad.
Correct.
There was no other parking in the alleys either, was there?
There was no parking in the alleys.
Not
but the
now.
way that was set
But they
up,
all had 2-car garages.
They all had 2-car garages and
Okay,
2
and 2 pads. Okay,
parking spaces,
right.
okay?
All of a
So-
sudden, that promise went away.
Right.
Well, but speaking as somebody who's spent a lot of time, like, with family members in townhouses, they're always lucky to have 2 spots.
Right.
Right.
I mean, lucky to have 2 spots, and we're giving them 2 spots right off the bat.
We're giving them 3.
Well, we're giving them 3, but that's what I'm saying, is I'm
just
not
gotta
even
walk a
worried
half
about,
mile
I
to
don't
get
even
it.
think most of that extra parking is gonna be utilized that often. I think that the 2 spots
If you
is
look
gonna
at
be.
Daisy and places like that over there, we got parking there. And then when they got over to Grand and Carnival, we gave it away.
Right, it's all
And look
parking.
what we got over there, we got police.
Wow.
The one thing I
Well-
want to make sure that you understand, though, we are not counting that additional parking space that is on each one of the end units in our count, okay, for these. We're giving all of those interior units 3 parking spaces.
Right.
Okay, so we're not saying, oh yeah, and their third one's gonna be on the end units.
Right.
They're fourth, right.
Yeah, they're 4.
Are we gonna get this in a drawing, in a final drawing?
Yeah. That'll be part of
Because
construction.
this
Well,
is-
not
this is
before-
not telling you much.
Not before we have another vote on it, right?
You're going to get
They'll
it.
give us the-
If
We
you
won't, we
agree
won't
to-
get another shot at this after tonight, right?
Yeah.
If you want another shot at it. But the thought that I thought you were heading was, if you tell them, we like this concept, go ahead and do these changes, then they're going to have the drawing that shows the changes.
And then when we get the drawing, which would be next month, we give them the final approval.
That's the way we could go with it, if that
Yeah.
makes you more comfortable.
That's what I would like to, that's what I would like to go, yes. That would give them the chance to get their stuff
Right.
back to Jim to review it, and any back and forth stuff, and then all we have to do next month, if everything's in order, is give final approval.
Right. Yeah, and
And if that's acceptable, if we continue on that
Right,
frame of thinking,
right, if we can get acceptance of these changes.
Okay.
Yeah, they just wanna make sure that it can be
have to
okay.
come back.
well, I just want, yeah.
Right.
I just don't want to lose, I didn't want to lose what Ollie's asked him, because I want that part of that too.
Yeah.
Take a second vote. Now, don't leave the parking yet, because I have another question if you're addressed.
Yeah, they're gaining on me.
Okay. Where am I gonna park my boat and my house trailer, my camper or whatever?
At your summer home?
interim mini storage?
Over at the storage,
So and they won't allow it? Okay. Any other type of storage area is gonna be allowed on here? I mean, I know each individual cannot have their own storage shed.
Right.
Is there gonna be a place to put some furniture, or you're saying the whatever it is?
HOA.
Thank you.
Saying there
Will
can't
not
be no
allow it.
storage shed behind these? It
No.
should be.
No, it can't be.
Not in community
Not in
village.
community village, no storage sheds.
Right.
So that means they gotta go somewhere else. Is that everybody's frame of mind here?
Yeah, right.
Wasn't mine, but
Or it's gotta happen in.
I'm all right with it.
Well, that's what it is, according, that's one of those gray areas.
Right.
I know it's one of the
That's-
gray areas.
well, it's not, our covenants would not allow trailers.
Okay.
To be left on.
I agree with the trailers and stuff
Okay.
shouldn't be there.
Right.
Okay.
You're talking about like lounge, lounge.
Where
You know, my summer, my grill, other than, other than the garage.
In for the winter.
Right.
And at the end of the day, recognize if the home builders are smart, which they are, they're gonna recognize, I'm not allowed a shed, so I'm going to have to incorporate some additional storage inside for stuff like that.
Okay. I think that addresses my concern on parking, and
On that same token about the sheds, is there also restriction on fences in community village?
yes.
As in none?
No, 4 feet high, isn't it?
They can do fences, but there's supposed to be a uniform plan that they
Right, okay.
follow.
Our intentions will be that we will draft HOA maps.
Right.
Okay? Because we're gonna have to give them to the builder. All right? We'll ask the town to
HOA?
approve it,
Yeah, they have a specific.
not for their legal approval, but to make sure we're not outside of any of the ordinances that we've seen.
Right.
They're usually big, boring documents,
Mm-hmm.
okay, most of which won't affect, Jim.
Right.
But we'll have restrictions in there, because we'll wanna maintain whatever we give the builder, they have to comply with those docs.
Right.
So we'll draw them, and then have the town look at them.
Okay.
Reach out for the main
Excuse me?
thoroughfare for-
What?
through here. It's the main thoroughfare.
Than 20?
Yeah,
Hmm?
Wider than 20?
It's 30 now.
30, yeah.
Well, I'm just talking about as far as that's the parking, where it comes down for the parking.
And they were allowed parking. Where were we gonna allow parking on just one side? Was that Clemson?
That's everywhere.
Crimson.
True.
That's all of them?
Yeah, so, and Crimson Avenue right now is 34 feet wide, with, I believe, with parking on both sides. Our Crimson's,
That's the only street that I want to be wide, because it's the main thoroughfare,
yeah,
all the way through to Angel Road.
and we worked that out with Rick last
And
time.
I'd like to see it that
It's
way.
30 feet
because-
wide. So it's a compromise between trying to maintain that community village character, but still wider than would normally be done.
That's-
Our other
That's where
internal
everybody's
streets-
gonna end up, on that
Right.
one street.
And what we've done, and what we've illustrated here is, this is the blow up, this was the plan that was Rise that we worked on today. And you can see, this
Inmate
is,
wants something.
that
Yeah,
shows
we'll get into that as soon as,
this is, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
This shows how we have what we call the bump out right here. So all of this parallel parking spaces along this section, they're secured. They will be striped. It'll be readily apparent and evident to everybody who's driving down. That's why parallel park. Now, if I take this and I go, across Crimson, you can see all of the parking that we have on Crimson. There's 10 spaces, there's 15 spaces, there's another 10 spaces down here, okay? There's another 10 spaces right there. We have, again, you can see the bump out, how it occurs like right here. We've got 6 spaces right there. We've got 3 spaces right here. That's all along Crimson. Now, when you get back into the neighborhoods, we go back to that 28-foot section where it'll be designated parking on one side in specific areas around the greens, the village greens.
Okay.
So we really have taken this to, we've really taken another look at Crimson Avenue and said, how do we want it to operate in the most effective way in light of the community village standards? So.
Henry, you had a question
Yeah, I did.
or comment?
Well, it's more of a question. The HOA will have an architectural control committee that basically reviews the fences and the exterior
Part
stuff
of
that
that
goes
is
with
that there has to be a permit.
from the HOA.
No, from the town.
Well,
Any
that's,
Any architectural approvals, this is the way I like to do it, any architectural approvals that the board, which is an HOA board, it's not you all, okay, has to be approved. They have to bring a permit from the town, that the town, has agreed to that. So there'll be a check and a balance. I have it in other counties to make sure that we're not out.
well, in some cases, those things conflict. And when case in point was we had a development that had restrictions, no above ground swimming pools. The city does not.
You can't get to the city without getting by the HOA board. The HOA board would agree, and part of that approval process is a permit from the town. So if you don't
That's
get
my
through-
point. There is no permit for the above ground swimming pools in the city.
There would be a requirement.
From,
Right.
yes,
That would be enforcement from within.
that would have to be your enforcement.
So
The same as like antennas and all the other stuff that goes with that.
between the two, the stricter standard always applies.
Okay.
Grant Drive, I guess.
Just want to be clear on the architectural control committee.
Okay. I guess, I had another question. How high, what's the height of the townhouses?
We'll check. I want to say that, everybody measured it differently, but I think the crest of the roof is 38 feet, okay?
Does that create an issue with 35? I thought the city ordinance was 35.
It is 35.
Like I said, I don't know. off the top of my head.
I don't recall if we tweaked that in that table, the community village area bulk setback table, where we allowed some.
And is it mean height to the,
The average of the,
Yes, to the ridge.
it is the original line.
it'll be whatever it is, that's what the builder will have to comply with.
If I may, I do know that in your community village ordinance, specific with respect to some of those dimensional characteristics, there is a provision in there that expressly authorizes the commission to make modifications to some of the setbacks and the other requirements if you feel it's appropriate to do so.
You're correct that with that,
Right.
but I don't believe anywhere in there it says the height, other than our
35
ordinance.
to the E, we got it right here.
Here's the,
Okay,
So that's,
the original standards that we had approved were for 35 feet with 3 asterisks measured to the eve of the
Okay.
all right.
I was close. That was
Sounds like we're coming up.
It's a,
Do we need to say more slides?
No.
Okay, good, because I can't read my writing.
I'm sorry. Get the flashlight up for you.
Okay. Does the commission have any more questions? Scott, comments?
comments, I took a look at the comparison between the two, and I looked at them in the prior meetings, and I have no issue with changing.
Okay. Any other comments from the floor? Jay, anything final before I ask for a vote?
Nope.
Jim, I'm going to ask you to repeat the motion.
Yeah.
Or just make it close, as long as you have the,
Acceptance of the proposed change.
Councilmember Archie moved to accept the proposed amendments for final subdivision. And what I didn't scribble down, but how does this sound? Pending review and approval of final construction drawings or amended construction drawings.
okay. Good. And that was seconded by Mr. Glass?
Myself.
No, okay. Mr. Wentz. Okay, all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Carried.
With that, can we speak to Community Village a little bit now?
Sure,
About that?
sure,
Okay.
sure.
Right? No more changes, please.
Right, let's get something
Yeah.
in the ground
Next
started.
I think
month,
they're ready to
You
go.
give a minute to them guys.
Yeah, I'm going
now
to,
they come in, they want to change back to the rear
I'm ready,
driveways.
I'm ready for them to
Hey,
go.
Ollie, can I have another bottle of water?
Sure.
Thank you. Anybody want any of it before I take it out? You want to pour some over in yours?
What's that? No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you're usually
grab
a
another one if I
half-hour
need.
Mine
kind of
last.
guy.
I know, but I'm thirsty.
Lot of talking.
Well, I was worried we weren't going to get a second shot at it. I want to make sure
We
we
got
get
a second shot there.
That's what I was worried about.
Well, and
at the
that's what he
beginning.
was saying, is that we could do that. We could have it come back to see us. And that was good enough for me.
But that was comfortable, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because I much prefer these plans than the first one.
All right, Mr. Wentz, you got a comment?
Yeah.
Need-
Thank you.
See ya. Okay. Why does nobody want to stay for this? Nobody wants to stay for this?
It's late.
Jim?
Everybody's leaving before we ask
I
plastic.
look at that, everyone's,
The offering plate.
just the offering, yeah. It's-
Here's the gentleman in the back.
I got a wedding to
What
go
we
to.
got left? Nothing else? We have a motion for adjournment?
Gentleman in the back.
I don't know if he's gonna let us do that.
You're doing good tonight.
Yeah,
Jim,
Jim?
keep it simple.
can we talk a little more about Community Village? Not about them, but Community Village. We've had two developments come in under Community Village, and neither one conforms to Community Village. Can we make Community Village conform to that? Can we get rid of this rear-loaded stuff that I don't even want to see in Tawny Town? I mean, don't freak out on me.
I'd rather not.
Don't freak
get
out
into
on
that discussion this evening.
Okay.
There was an intent to this, and
That's what I think I'm missing is the intent, because I don't see a positive from it.
Why don't we bring that up on one of our end of the evening discussions?
That would be
Just-
great.
that's
Okay.
yeah, that's
Just
a
not
whole
this one.
nother-
That's fine. I
Just
just
not
want to let you, I want to discuss it more, so when we have time to do that, and you can prepare.
But keep in mind, you could have somebody that wants to come in and build a skyscraper and say, well, the code won't let me build a skyscraper. Your code is screwed up. You know, do we want a skyscraper? So, you know, this is what we wanted when it was written.
Right.
8 years ago, everybody wanted to build this. The market tanked. Now nobody wants to build it. They're building it in Frederick, but they don't want to build it here.
Yeah, but we're not.
So, you know,
I'm kind of glad they don't have the rear alleys.
the code, all we want to
Okay.
let people do what they want. So if you guys want to do that,
But it's not an abstract exercise, because you said two, but the third already got designation, and that was before we were smart and put an expiration date on it. So Mountain Brook, out there, has community village designation, even though they got it years ago.
20 years ago.
They could come in and say, I want to build a community village, but if they say that, they're going to use the code that's in effect when they do. So it would be this one, unless we changed it.
Right.
So it's not an abstract exercise, because you can affect how another development's going to build.
And that would be my intent. Okay.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the more you read this, the more hit and miss. But I tell you,
if this
we're
isn't
getting, we gotta be getting better at it. So as time goes on, we should be able to do like
refine it.
refine it, right?
Yeah, and I think now's a good time. Maybe not now, but in the near future, let's refine that.
And this was a vision that the city had, 8 to 10 years ago, maybe longer now.
Right.
And, if that vision is no longer what is desirable, if, the idea of the neo-traditional community is not what anybody wants, but you want something with a high density that's not R6000, then certainly it's time to explore it.
Okay.
And I'm not wed to the alleys or anything like that, but,
Well, you don't have no names on alleys now. You didn't want them.
I didn't like the alleys, I didn't like the
Okay.
street names.
Tell you what, we spent months and months with
believe
this, with this.
I believe it.
we had a task force assembled, and
Yeah.
the city bought into the idea, and, we've lost some of the, folks who were on board when this was done. Unfortunately, with Jim Lefebvre not being around right now, he was involved in that effort and could probably speak
To the wise,
to some of the questions.
And George, yeah.
yeah.
But anyhow, so,
All right, I think we need to keep moving forward.
Just one comment on just this topic here. I agree that with Councilman Wentz, that it really needs to be revisited. We've attempted 2 community villages in the city, of which none of them really worked very well. I mean, we got good results, but we had to do a lot of juggling to get things out of it.
Well, we've had issues with,
Both of them, right?
yeah, even Carol Vista, we had issues with how close the houses were together and the things like that. I mean, there was issues.
This is more than juggling, though.
Oh, yeah, yeah, so let's move on. Ordinance and agreements, there was none. Planning and zoning report, Jim, you still have any voice left?
I think we've probably touched on everything.
Except, right.
The only thing we really didn't talk about so far is Bollinger Park annexation. That's moving ahead. Jay might want to add a little bit on that. Won't get a little farther here, but I think you're finally chugging away on that.
Just move on over into your projects and the active projects.
Okay. Not really a whole lot new to report. Meadowbrook is moving ahead, working on assigning some street addresses to those properties so that they can start looking for a permit for a model home in the spring. Creekside, I don't know if anybody's been out there, you might notice that we did erect a 3-way stop at the intersection of Amicus and Water Run Street on the Stumptown Road end. The plans didn't call for any traffic control signage there, and some of the residents had voiced concerns and.
That's so much safer.
It isn't clear who should be yielding the right of way to who at that intersection. It's kind of an odd configuration when you really look at it in the field, so the developer was agreeable to posting those stop signs. And
So much better.
a week or so ago. But the other Creekside issues, the sidewalks and so on, remain.
So have they said in the spring if they plan on doing the top coat on that road, or?
That's the intent.
Okay.
But they still have some other, more than punch list items. They still have the sidewalk along Break Iron Street and along Baltimore Street too.
Rick, did a very thorough inspection of that whole project, and you just couldn't put from a road standpoint, you just couldn't throw a wear course on top. It had been deteriorated, the base course.
There's repair that needs done. Okay.
The base course has to be repaired,
Okay.
along with a long list of other things.
I think the base course work was done, but not soon
Yeah, it's
enough
been
to
repaired all
be
over
able
the
to do
place.
the top coat until spring.
No,
Right.
the base coat, yes, you're right, but it's deteriorated.
Again?
They have to go back and do.
Again?
Work to the base coat.
Okay.
Okay.
That's really about it, unless anybody has questions about any of the projects on the list.
Is similarly related, talking about roads on that side of town. Jay, at some point, can we discuss with the council about the Wilson Avenue issue? I know we had discussed at one point in a council meeting, but
That's gotten to be a real issue too,
what's that?
Wilson Avenue.
In terms of it not existing?
Well, in terms of how they're using it and everything like that.
Yeah, we need to focus on that.
Okay, thank you.
Jay, anything left?
The only other thing is, as Jim mentioned, the annexation resolution for the Ballinger Park and the related properties out there is going to get introduced at the next council meeting. It's going to be subject to a whole, process, but that's coming along, and it shouldn't be any big deal because there's no residents. So,
Scott?
My list isn't as long as it looks.
But it has handouts.
One more.
Oh, wait, yeah, there might be one there. Here.
I don't know,
We're
I
good.
passed them
We got
all.
some left over.
Actually, there's one extra.
They're the same?
I'll kind of do these out of order. It's that time of year again for the 2015 annual report. I've already been in contact with Jim, the information from town, so that document is well in process. I will have a draft to you in April for you to review and hopefully get your endorsement by May, at which point we'll take it to the county planning commission for their adoption and we'll forward it on to MDD.
Okay.
The little card I handed out was the Bike Ped Master Plan Survey. I talked about that last month briefly. The deadline for taking the survey is tomorrow, so I believe we have through tomorrow to take it. We actually got a pretty good response, I think 700 plus response, which is a fairly decent number to work with. So feel free to, I think the website, the exact location might be on there. It takes probably about 10 or 15 minutes. It all depends on how thorough you want to be, because there are text boxes that are available for additional comments. If something you don't see in the bulletin list, if you want to make extra comments or additional statements, that's also available here, but it should be open until tomorrow. The 2014, master plan, we're in, or water and sewer master plan, we are in the spring amendment cycle. I think the town has anything to add or amend. Kind of give you a heads up, now's the time to do it for that. And of course, the document's updated every 3 years, we still have some time on that, but we do the spring and fall amendment cycle each year with relation to that. And the last handout that I gave you was the county master plan. The county planning commission is working on implementing the zoning changes, basically major changes to our zoning ordinance as a result of the new land use designations that exist in the 2014 plan. I included the 2000 plan map in the back of that. Come back and forth and compare the two. Really nothing outstanding for Tawnytown. At one point in time, you had a proposed industrial site south of town that kind of sparked interest. That is long since went away, so there's really no fireworks out here to speak of in and around your growth area. Other places, other towns had more significant changes right around your borders. So that's basically for FYI purposes. And if you have any questions, we can get into that next month. I can help you out with anything you might see in the handouts that you might want some clarification on. But, there will be major changes to our industrial and commercial categories at the county level, as well as potentially our residential categories. We have a rewriting of the zoning ordinance. If that's what's planned, whether it happens or not, I guess we'll see. It all depends on political will. I've been with the county long enough. I've seen this process twice now, where they were going to tackle rewriting the zoning ordinance and nothing ever came of it. So we'll see if we can get that done. It's going to have to happen fairly quickly, because you end up getting into an election year cycle.
I'm just saying, when you got 3 years
You get
left.
3 years to do stuff, and that fourth year, at that point, they want to put the brakes on. So that leaves us now, I think, with about 2.5 years to get this
Henry, you have anything? Nothing. Bradley?
I don't believe I have anything further, no.
Tobias? Jim?
Just on your table, as you probably noticed, was a draft of Chapter 8. Hopefully, we can talk about that next month for resources for the comp plan. And if you have any comments for the Chapter 7 draft that incorporates all the updates from the Board of Ed, emergency services, all those things that we talked about over the last couple months. If you have any comments on that draft, please mark it up and let me know. And just one last thing, commission members, we pass on that there will be a memorial service for Betty on Saturday the 5th.
Excuse me?
Memorial service for Betty Naylor is Saturday at 11. Pass that on.
Okay.
Trinity Lutheran Church.
Okay. Anyone from the floor have any comments or anything to bring up? Councilman?
Thank you very much for that. I'm just impressed with the work that you do.
All right.
Back anytime.
Yep. Jim, I just want to say thanks for the overview you did of Meads Crossing. I know you took a lot of time, and we really appreciate the effort you put forth for this, even though things may change.
Nothing's gonna change.
With nothing else, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You
Do
did good.
you have a New Windsor?
Right?
You have New Windsor, not New Windsor.
Well, that's it, I was.
What impact